This podcast is a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to find out more. Welcome to 20th Century Boy. My name is Rubber Miken, and this is the inside of my mind. G'day. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 20th Century Boy, a podcast by me, Radio Mike. Obviously, at the top there, I said Rubber Miken, and that is because on every episode of this podcast, we start the show with a listener-submitted RM-themed name, or Radio Mike-themed name. This week, it was Rubber Miken, which the person who sent it, I can't remember who it was, but they said in brackets, funniest venue name. I don't understand that, because like Rubber Miken, I thought it was a reference to that Elvis Presley song Rubberneckin', which is like that. Is that an Elvis Presley song? This is such a weird way to start the podcast, but it's like that Rubberneckin', where it's like, stop, look and listen, baby, that's my philosophy. It's called Rubberneckin', baby, that's alright with me. Can someone confirm that? Otherwise, I've completely misinterpreted the meaning of that name. Radio Mike, though, and this is my podcast, 20th Century Boy, a weekly AV log, audio-video blog, about my life as a 26-year-old person trying to make their way through the rough and tumble of living life in these crazy, crazy uncertain times. As Professor Slughorn said in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince film edition, these are mad times we're living in. Mad. And that's the kind of cutting-edge pop culture references you can expect on this podcast. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Go and check out some of the other episodes. I'm very happy to have you here. This episode, it's going to be a big episode. Lots happening on this episode. And I will announce, after about 6 to 7 months of living in a share house here in Northcote, unfortunately, due to circumstances outside of my control, I will be moving away from here. I never revealed that I lived in Northcote, by the way. I remember people were trying to figure out where I live. I live in Northcote, which is a suburb here in Melbourne. I will be moving back to my parents' house for a bit. Yay! I'm 26. I will be going back to my parents' house for a few months while I find another place to live. How fun's that? So I will be moving back to Kew. If you're in Kew, look out for me. I will be in Kew. And that's where the podcast began, in my dad's garage. And I will be recording again in my dad's garage. So that's going to be a bit of a blast from the past here. But as always on this podcast, I ask you to do a 360 on the spot at the beginning. And the reason for that is because we are the world's only winnable podcast. If you find another winnable podcast that existed before this moment, you will get $1,000 from me. We're also the world's only podcast offering $1,000 reward at the moment, I believe. The way you win your podcast, do your 360 on the spot right now. If you happen to see me in the flesh at the exact point that you're doing your 360, you have won the podcast. Come up to me. The podcast ends when you win, but there is also a prize that is not $1,000. So there's lots of different prizes. That's a mystery prize that you get for winning the podcast. And people always sending me messages doing their 360s. Radio Christina with a K, welcome to the RF. She sent me a message saying she was on the train, did a 360. I wasn't in the train. I believe she lives in Queensland. I'm obviously in Victoria. So low chance of her winning the pod anytime soon, as I have no direct plans to be in Queensland over the next 6 months, right? But it could happen. See, and it's weird. I was in Kew bringing some stuff over to my parents over the week, and I stopped into Subway, Eat Fresh, unsponsored by the way, and I got one of their new spicy chicken subs for lunch, and while I was ordering in line, a guy was like, hey, you're Radio Mike. I recognize your voice. Crazy. And that is actually becoming a weekly occurrence. I talked about it last week. It happened in the city the week before. Radio Irksome, who was a member of the Discord, get in the Discord for a group chat with other listeners of this podcast. Radio Irksome spotted me in the city. Every week it's happening. What is going on? The tradies who work next door to me recognize me. I say hi to them every morning still. Am I a celebrity? I don't know. You decide. No, I'm not. But people recognize my voice because they hear it a lot across a lot of different things. I think mainly the guy who recognized me at Subway, he said he was a Luke and Lewis listener. He knew my voice from Luke and Lewis. Whereas these guys, the tradies next door, they recognize my voice from Hamish and Andy. Lots of different people recognizing my voice from different areas. I don't know. Not many people recognize me by the way I look. No one looks at me and knows really that I'm Radio Mike. Except once I was at PAX in like 2019 or 2018 and someone recognized me. So yeah, like if you do hear me talking, if you're at a bar or you're at a Subway or you're at a Macca's and you hear someone who sounds like me, it probably is me. And it's definitely not Dom Fay from Collective Noun, who I once got mistaken for last year, who is a friend of the show, Dom Fay. But yeah, that's really weird. So I will be around Q. Look out for me if you're around there. I'll be, walking up and down High Street Q and, probably around the area a lot. So say hi to me if you're around that area a bit. I wanted to make a really, really exciting announcement that I forgot to do last week. And that announcement is, and I've realized it this week, the song Chicka-Meme-a by ABBA, the song Chicka-Meme-a by ABBA is no longer stuck in my head. It's no longer stuck in my head. And if you haven't been following this, one of the goals on the 20th Century board behind me, which is a whiteboard where we keep track of all the goals on the show, one of the goals of the year was to learn all the lyrics to the song Chicka-Meme-a by ABBA and perform it on the show, which I did 2 weeks ago. And the reason for that was 15 years of my life, that song was stuck in my head. And finally, because I learned all the lyrics and performed on the show, it's not in my head. I haven't thought of it in so long, right? I am so happy it's no longer stuck in my head. It worked. Chicka-Meme-a is no longer stuck in my head. The song currently stuck in my head, which is still relevant to this podcast, is Rainbow Connection by the Muppets. And I am worried that Rainbow Connection is going to be stuck in my head for the next 15 years, but I'm happy with it for now because it's a banger of a song. But a new thing has been happening in the Discord of this podcast, and as I mentioned over in the Discord, it's a group chat, lots of different channels, movie talk, music channel, podcast channel, gaming channel. You can talk with other listeners of this podcast. There's like 200 people in there talking every night. It's a lot of fun. I love it. New game is being played in there, which is basically a new, I guess it's like a new meme format, right? A new meme format in which you post a picture of something that sounds like Chicka-Meme-a and then underneath you write, "You and I know," right? So here's an example. There's 4 examples from this week. The first one, I believe, came in from Radio Scooter. Welcome to the Radio Family, Radio Scooter. It's a picture, and this is how nerdy this podcast is. You'll get it if you're a nerd like me. It's a picture of the grass-type starter Pokemon from Pokemon Gold and Silver versions, the first evolution. Picture of that Pokemon, and then underneath, "You and I know." I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it, and the answer to that is Chikorita, "You and I know." Now that's great. I love that. The next one is a picture of an Indian dish, an Indian curry dish with chicken in it. Give you a couple seconds to think about it. And this one, I believe, came in from... I'll find out who wrote this one in. Who wrote this one in? It was... This one was Radio Scooter. Maybe I've gotten mixed up. The first one was actually Radio Ganonbort. This one is Radio Scooter. Sorry, guys. The answer is Chicken Tikka, "You and I know." Now that's another great meme format. The next one is a picture of a woman and the singer of the songs, Grace Kelly, Love Today, Happy Endings, Big Girls, You Are Beautiful, right? Name of that artist, Mika. Couple great songs there. And there was a bit of debate about this one, but the woman is a chick. You know, some guys are like, bloody chicks, love chicks. Chick and Mika. Chick and Mika, you and I know. Now that's great. And finally, a picture of a pizza, which has the meat of a farm-based egg-laying animal on it. The answer to that one, chicken pizza, you and I know. So that's been a fun meme. If you have a fun Chickatita, you and I know based meme, like it's going to be hard to come up with more. We've got Chickarita, Chicken Tikka, Chicken Mika, and Chicken Pizza. Any other variations of any sort, really welcome. So please send them in if you've got one. Guys, last week we launched a brand new segment on the show. And it didn't have an opener at the time, but boy, oh boy, does it have an opener now. And I'm really excited about this because I did mention, and a lot of this podcast I've realized is just like, I guess like me getting songs stuck in my head or lyrics from songs stuck in my head. And then from there, coming up with segments about them. And that is why this segment is called Pondering Like Kermit.
Hey ho, Kermit the Frog here.
It's Pondering Like Kermit. Now, here's how I explain this segment. Basically, there is the character Kermit the Frog, and the character Kermit the Frog sings a song in the Muppets, and that song is called Rainbow Connection. Why are there so many songs about rainbows? And my observation of that song, right, was that Kermit the Frog, when singing that song, is actually, he's just pondering something in song form. He is pondering, why are there so many songs about rainbows? That is what he's pondering in song form. So I invited all of you guys, the listeners, to send a message in to the podcast phone line, 1-800-438-353, and ponder something, anything, like Kermit. The same way Kermit the Frog ponders stuff, I want you guys to ponder that too in song form. Here's an example. I'll think of one on the spot. Why are there so many people recognizing my voice in public? That's a ponder like Kermit. Anyone can do it. I did talk last week about how I had never watched anything from the Muppets before, and then just randomly on Disney Plus, I watched the movie The Muppets, the 2014 Muppets movie with Jason Segel, and loved it, and was like absolutely obsessed with it. And people seemed really surprised by this. Like a lot of people expected that I would be a hardcore Muppets fan, just like based on who I am. Someone wrote in, the Muppet reveal shocked me. Defo thought Mike was a Muppets guy. I'm not surprised. Radio Alex Sky wrote in, I've forgotten how the Muppet meme started, but I'm glad it did, because a lot of people in the podcast community are now doing pondering like Kermit's. You know, why are there so many people pondering like Kermit in the podcast community? That's another great one. Radio Lazar, welcome to the RF. Listening to the latest ep now, and I can't believe you hadn't heard the Rainbow Connection before. I was obsessed with it as a child. Makes sense. It's a really, really good song. But a Pondering Like Kermit did come in from Radio Cusbro. Welcome to the RF Radio Cusbro. Welcome to the family, the collective group of listeners of this podcast. Now, Cusbro, it seems, made a little bit of a mistake and actually kind of offended me with this one. So here's a voicemail I got, because basically when you leave a voicemail to the podcast hotline, 1-800-438-353, I get a voice, an MP3 in an email from your number. I can see your number, by the way. And Radio Cusbro left this voicemail, which I was kind of taken aback by, even if he was joking, which I assume he was. And here's what he said.
Hey, Radio Mike and the Radio family, it's Cusbro here.
G'day, Cusbro.
I've got a Pondering Like Kermit for you.
Awesome.
Here goes. Why are there so many people listening to this podcast?
And that's all I got. And I was a little taken aback, like I said, because it felt like you were saying, and I know, Cusbro, I've seen your name come up before, so I know that you listen to this podcast, and you probably don't hate it. But it did sound a lot like you were sort of questioning the legitimacy of this podcast. It was basically like you were saying that, with segments as stupid as this, right? And I acknowledge the segment is stupid, but it sounded like you were saying, with segments as stupid as this, it is almost irrational or unbelievable to you that anyone could be listening to this podcast. Like, it's like you're saying, this segment is so bad and stupid. You were like, it was a meta joke. You're like, this segment is so stupid that I can't believe people like this podcast. It's such a bad podcast. Now, that's what I was thinking. I then got an email from Cusbro. He says, and thank you for clearing this up, Cusbro. Hi, Radio Mike. I stuffed up my first call to you. It was meant to be a different one, not about people listening to the podcast. So now I'm curious, obviously. I want to see, how did this mistake happen? How did he stuff it up so badly? He says, I was driving, okay, and forgot what I had planned to say. So Cusbro has gone into this. He's listening to the podcast. He's like, oh, great. I've got a great one. I'm going to call up. He's in the car. He's driving along. Yep. Calls in the number 1-800-438-353. And then, when you call 1-800-438-353, which is 1-800-GET-FKD, a funny voicemail plays. And then, you can leave a message. And in that moment, he's gone, oh no, at this peak time, at this crucial moment, I have forgotten what I was supposed to say. And then he's improvised, with a rather offensive one. And he says, I made up that really lame podcast one on the spot. And then, thankfully, not a true reflection of my thoughts on the show at all. Love listening and the radio family. Love you too, man. Have a great rest of your week. Well, I will now. May see you in the Dream Factory. TM. So I guess that's him. Is he trademarking the Dream Factory? Which we haven't done. It's a saying on the show. But it looks like Cusbro is trademarking it, which is cool. I guess Cusbro now owns the trademark for the Dream Factory just by the fact that he did a TM. Signs off with Cusbro. So, I'd really like, if it's okay, to play to you the original thought of Cusbro and what he originally wanted to send in. Cusbro, take it away.
Hey, Radio Mike and the radio family.
Hey again.
Cusbro here.
I like how you pretending
my
that you didn't send the first one.
Ponder of the week. It's why are there so many remakes of Godzilla? There you go. Have a good one, everyone. See you next time.
A great pondering like Kermit. I think it's funny because it still feels... You didn't get the segment name right in the second one. I think you called it Kermit Ponder. I guess it's a Kermit Ponder. Why are there so many remakes of Godzilla? A great pondering like Kermit. Kermit might ponder this. Like, this is something you can see Kermit the Frog in his pond on his lily pad playing the banjo and is thinking this exact thing. Now, if you want an answer to that, Cusbro, and I will answer it, I personally think that it comes down to money. The answer to your question, why are there so many remakes of Godzilla, comes down to money. Why are they trying to franchise Godzilla into a cinematic universe? Money. There are lots of Godzilla films. I believe in season 1 of this podcast 2 or 3 years ago, I talked about Godzilla a fair bit. And I've seen a few of the original Japanese Godzilla films. The most recent one was Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, in which Godzilla fights a monster that is almost purely pollution, and it's pretty interesting. And that monster can turn into a UFO or like a flying saucer, which is very weird. That movie was weird. I've also seen Shin Godzilla, which I believe was recommended to me by someone who listened to this podcast, whose name I can't remember. If that was you, let me know. Shin Godzilla is like the 2016 Godzilla film. I've seen the most recent American Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I really liked King of the Monsters. I think I think it's Ghidorah, the three-headed dragon. I just thought looked so cool in that movie. And I've seen a bunch more. I've seen Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, which is really, really funny. All the Japanese Godzilla films are so funny to watch because they're just so dumb and so like, I don't know, they're so Japanese in what they are, I guess. And also, a lot of them were from the 60s and 70s, and they consist of like, it's so funny how you can see that it's just a guy in a suit. Like Godzilla moves the exact same way a human would move. And it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's very funny. Godzilla is cool. I really want to see Godzilla versus Kong. I still haven't seen it. I might have missed it at cinemas. But I definitely want to check that out. I also really want to see Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat movie, which I think comes out, which is already out. I think I'm seeing it on Sunday. So I am very, very excited for that. But yeah, I guess that's sort of it, bro. That's it, mate. That's why there's so many remakes of Godzilla, because they want to make money. So like, I'll do my best to answer the Pondering like Kermits in the future. But I might not be able to answer all of them. All right. I think we should also do another much loved segment on this show. Honestly, this is one of the greatest segments, my favorite segment on the show at the moment. And the segment, and remember before I said a lot of the segments on this show just emerge from me finding a lyric in a song interesting. This segment is called this. Okay, it's this movie I think you'd like. And essentially, the idea behind this segment obviously comes from the Vance Joy song Riptide, where Vance Joy recommends the movie Midnight Cowboy through song. There's this movie that I think you like. This guy decides to quit his job and heads to New York City. After a lot of investigation, we discovered that movie is called Midnight Cowboy. It is a movie from the 60s. It was originally an X-rated movie. It is something to do with prostitution, and one of the goals of the show, basically, well, the way this segment works is we're doing exactly what Vance did in his song. We are recommending movies that we think people might like, right? Through song, through Vance Joy's Riptide format. And the ultimate goal of this segment that I really do want to make happen, and we do need to update the 20th Century board, which currently has a few goals. Those goals are complete the Pilkey bibliography. That's Dav Pilkey, the author of the Captain Underpants series and several other books, which I definitely need to take a bit more stock in. I bought the whole Dav Pilkey bibliography off like Book Depository and haven't even touched them, so I'm gonna get a move on with that. Excursion to Wonderland in Sydney and a photo shoot with listeners. So hopefully we can do that soon. That's an abandoned theme park in Sydney. Maybe that's an end of the year kind of thing, long term. Get pasta with Sam Garlep. Sam Garlep is a friend of the show who refused to get pasta with me. And when I met him when I bumped into him in South Melbourne, he said he will get dinner with me and get pasta from the pasta shop on Clarendon Street, South Melbourne at some point. Do need to organise that. And a very long-term goal, especially because we can't travel at the moment, is to go to Loch Ness in Scotland and hopefully see the Loch Ness Monster. But I do want to add one, and let's put this in position number 4. This goal is, basically, we want to get Vance Joy on this show, and in having Vance Joy on the show, we want to do a live this movie that I think you'd like. We want to get Vance Joy to recommend a different movie with the Riptide format. So we want Vance Joy to do this segment. Let's put number 4, Vance Joy Riptide movie seg. That is on our goal board. Vance Joy Riptide movie segment. But last week I put it out to you guys. I did another movie, and again, a lot of the current content of the podcast just flows in from itself, like it feeds into itself. Last week I did one of these, and I recommended a movie that I think you guys might like. I would like to play you the movie that I recommended last week. So here is what I recommended last week. There's this movie that I think you like. This frog decides to go to Hollywood to start a performing career. Yeah, so that's what I recommended. And that movie, well, someone sent in a guess. One listener sent in a guess. That listener was Radio Shooter. Welcome again to the Radio Family, Radio Shooter. Radio Shooter has submitted a guess for every single one of these segments. He's never gotten it right, unfortunately, but he's sending one in every week. And he has sent one in this week. I don't listen to them before the show, so I don't know what he's going to say. But Radio Shooter has taken a guess for this movie. I think it's pretty obvious, particularly what's come before on this podcast. You should be able to figure it out. And I'd love for more people to submit them. 1-800-438-353, of course. Here's what Radio Shooter left on the podcast hotline. Let's see what his guess is.
G'day, Mike. Shooter
G'day, mate.
here.
Hey,
Happy
Shooter.
25th birthday, mate. Just wanted to put my submission in for this week's movie that I think you like.
Thanks, man.
Pretty confident this week. My guess is Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Okay, so he's guessed Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. I'd like to say shit, unfortunately incorrect again. And, well, here's an update on this. If you're a long-term listener of the show, and thank you, if you're new to the show, you won't know this, but every time we do this segment, Radio Shooter has guessed Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Now, the thing is, I've never seen Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. I've never seen it. And I guess one of the things with Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium, which I will now refer to as MMWE, MMWE. I'll just refer to it as Mr. Megorium. Mr. Megorium. I haven't seen it. So, like, every time I do one of these and recommend a movie, Shooter is guessing Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. And I honestly don't know if, A, he thinks... maybe... Okay, there's three options here. Option one, all of these things, coincidentally, do happen in Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium. Two, Shooter is joking and thinks it's funny to troll this segment, which takes me... Which, in that case, I feel like you're making a mockery of the segment, and I feel like if we go back to Cusbro's message from earlier about why are there so many people listening to this podcast, I believe you're making a mockery of this Shooter. And finally, option three is... he does just genuinely think that the movie I think he'd like is Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium, and he just is getting it wrong. There's three options. So, I don't know what option it is, Shooter. I really don't know. Maybe you can give us more context next week, but I am going to update the goal board again, and there's a lot of goals going on. So let's put this in position 5. We don't have a position 1 at the moment, because there's not enough space here in this section. There's not enough space to put position 1, so we're just starting on position 2. But I should also thank whoever bought like 15 whiteboard markers and sent them to my work. Thank you. They did arrive. I am using them. I'm not sure who did that, but I am using them. Today I'm using purple. Goal number 5 that I'm going to do personally, and you're all welcome to join, is watch Mr. Megorium's Wonder, and then for Emporium, I'll just do EMP dot. That's short for Emporium. Now, why am I going to watch it? Because I think this is the least embarrassing way for me to figure out what Cusbro is doing. If I watch it, then I can confirm whether or not Mr. Megorium's Wonder Emporium has all these things. So I am going to have to watch Mr. M's Wonder E. So that's one of the goals on the board. The movie I thought you'd like, where the frog decides to go to Hollywood and start a performing career, is the Muppets movie from 1979. A great movie. And I want to watch all the Muppets movies and then do a YouTube video ranking all the Muppets movies in terms of how much I liked them. So thank you, Shooter. If you aren't making a mockery of the podcast, thank you. If you are, shame on you. Shame on you. I will continue to play your voice messages, but just know, shame on you if you were making a mockery of this fine, fine show. I did say there's going to be a few goals on the show, and here's the next short to medium term goal. I talked to Pat about this recently, and this is short to medium term that will involve some listener interaction. So, and last time I tried to do a segment with listener interaction, I don't know if anyone remembers last year I tried to launch the Tom DeLonge Choir, which is where I asked listeners to send in audio of them singing, "Don't waste your time on me, you're already a voice inside my head," the way Tom DeLonge does in that Blink-182 song. Got a few submissions, but not enough to make a choir out of it, which is what I wanted. So hoping for a little bit more response on this one. But here goes nothing. I'm going to put this out there. I have never, ever in my life lost a game of Monopoly. I have never lost Monopoly in my life. Never. To this day, every time I've ever played Monopoly, I have won. Now, one of the goals for the show that I want to do, I want to get 3 listeners of this podcast, and there's way more, that's like, there's way, I've seen the numbers, there's more than 3 of you out there, right? There is a lot more than 3 of you out there. I want 3 listeners of this podcast to write in, get in touch, if you want to play the 20th Century Boy Monopoly mix-up. I just came up with that on the spot. The 20th Century Boy Monopoly game. Basically, I want to play Monopoly with 3 of you, and as my streak suggests, beat you. 3 people, we will play likely in person, so I guess ideally you're based in Melbourne, but if you're not, maybe we can work it out. I want 3 people to play Monopoly with. Maybe if there's people international or interstate that want to play, we could possibly look at some kind of online or like video game form of Monopoly, but my preference is to play Monopoly on the board with 3 other people and we just play. Might take 5 hours, might take 10. I want to play Monopoly. I want to beat 3 people who listen to this podcast in Monopoly. It will be house rules. It will be the way I've grown up playing. That's fair. It's always house rules. And the Monopoly set that we will play on is The Simpsons Monopoly, which is a Monopoly set that I got for Christmas, probably in about 2008. I would love to play with you. Lots of Simpsons-themed fun in that edition of Monopoly. But yeah, if you are interested in trying to dethrone me in my currently undefeated Monopoly record, please send me a message. You will obviously need to be available for like a day because we will need to play it. And I am really looking forward to challenging 3 people who listen to this podcast in Monopoly. Let me know. And hopefully we can develop this in the next few months. One new segment as well. A lot of new segments on this episode. This is a new segment extravaganza. I talked... This actually emerged on my Harry Potter and the Boys podcast, where I essentially realize that I think it's really funny. I think AFL, Australian football, is really funny in the way that the commentators call the matches. And there's one, I'm a very casual AFL fan. I like the sport. I don't follow it too closely. And I really find one commentator the funniest. His name is James Brayshaw. He's a great footy commentator, right? As far as I know, he's a great footy commentator. He actually works at the radio station I work at. So I've actually met him once. He wouldn't remember, but I see him around a lot. And I guess I talked about on Harry Potter and the Boys, my Harry Potter fan fiction podcast with Jack Post, about how James Brayshaw just often seems to do a lot of this in his commentary. Oh! Just yelling. He just yells. It's just yelling in commentary form. Maybe that's what the people want to hear. He's lauded as one of the greatest AFL commentators ever to call the sport. Now, last week got a message in from a few people who said that they loved that JB parody. And Radio Blazer, welcome to the radio family, Radio Blazer. Radio Blazer wrote in giving more examples of classic JB moments, which I played on the show last week. Blazer's back. He's sent in a few more, so thank you, Blazer. Thank you for this. So I'd like any AFL fans of the RF, feel free to send these in. for this brand new segment we're going to do from time to time. And it's a segment that I like to call Radio Mike Presents The Best of James Brayshaw. It is the best of James Brayshaw. I want to collate the best moments of James Brayshaw commentating AFL football. AF, Australian football. AFL football would be Australian Football League football. Aussie rules football, I believe, is what we call it. Some great submissions to start us off. A few more from Blazer here. This one, which really caught my attention, that I don't quite understand. Some of the context that Blazer has given is Jake King was a cult hero player at Richmond, played about 100 games, colourful mates, friends with Toby Mitchell, the bikie. I guess he's a bikie, Toby Mitchell. And JB, James Brayshaw, loved Jake King. And then basically Blazer sent through this audio. Here's the first one.
Ball forward, it's picked up by Jackson. He's gone. Sausage! Look at push-up. Sausage! All set up by push-up.
So just multiple uses of the word sausage, which I don't quite... I have no idea what happened in that moment on the field. Did a spectator throw sausages onto the field and then James Brayshaw's gone, sausage! Sausage! I don't know. Here's another one Blaz sent in for the best of James Brayshaw.
JB, you're again the best caller to ever call the game.
Come on, Gary.
It's Mrs. B. He's going to join us. He'll enjoy this. This is JB at his very, very best.
Oh, there's a dust on in the middle.
Oh, 3 on 1.
Oh, 3 or 4 are starting to get involved.
Push up.
Push up. Push up. He's decked him. He was twice his bloody size. Look at push up go. That's what he's in the side for, Gary.
He's still going too.
Look at little Jake the Snake.
There you go. That's the best of JB there. Please send in some more. We want to make a compilation of the best moments of James Brayshaw on this podcast. Even though this has never been a sports themed podcast at all. But here we are. One quick thing, I did want to do a welfare check because here's something that we haven't come back to for a while, and it's this thing that Radio Nacho Cheese, welcome to the radio family, the best friend of the podcast, and I don't know if you still listen. You possibly do, you possibly don't. Radio Nacho Cheese, who, you know, for a long time in this podcast would give us a monthly update. Every month he'd send a voicemail to 1-800-438-353 and just check in and let us know what he's doing. And at the start of this year, Nacho Cheese wrote to me and said he wanted to mix it up this year and start a new segment which we called Radio Nacho Cheese's Little Lectures, where he'd do little lectures and tidbits and information bites on different things in Australia that he found interesting. And the first one that Radio Nacho Cheese did at the very start of this season, this year, was something to do with a haunted pub in Victoria. And he gave us a tease about this haunted pub and said he was going to go to the haunted pub and give a status report. From there, we didn't hear from Nacho Cheese for a long time. So for a while, we actually thought he was killed by a ghost. Well, I did. I don't know if you guys did. I got in touch with him and he appeared on the 100th episode of this podcast, alive and well and all good. Still the best friend of the show. But since then, and that was probably a month ago now, have not heard anything from Radio Nacho Cheese. Like, he hasn't given us any update on the pub. He hasn't sent a voicemail. I am getting the impression that perhaps Nacho Cheese doesn't want to do the little lectures. So this is, Nacho, totally up to you. No obligation. But I guess this is just me doing a welfare check, checking in on you and making sure that you're okay because, you know, you've given us so much care and love over the years. We want to make sure that you're okay as well, Nacho Cheese. You know, really sad we haven't heard from you. We made a whole opener for your little lectures and everything. Pat, the producer of the show, did a voicemail, did a voice recording and everything for that opener. So I'd hate to put it to waste. So I'd love to hear from you if you still listen to the podcast. If not, well, I guess goodbye, but you won't even hear this. But that's pretty sad, man. So I just wanted to check in on Nacho Cheese. All right, we are coming to the end of this week's ep, but I do want to do one of these. The plug. It's the plug. It's where I plug everything that I would like you to check out as part of the wider Radio Mike Productions content catalog. I'm pumping out a lot of content now, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm seeing growth, but again, I'd like to implore you to tell your friends and share some of the stuff around. That would be absolutely awesome. The first thing I want to plug this week is that Patreon, patreon.com/Radio Mike. You can support the show there for as little as $1 a month. If you're in the intern tier, which is $4 or more, I believe, you get access finally to an exclusive podcast, the Mike's Podcast. What is the Mike's Podcast? This is something people have been wanting for a while. In the first season of this show, I was joined by Editor Mike, Intern Mike, and Siggy Mike, 3 different Mikes, all with very different personalities. And those guys are back sitting down with me, exclusive to Patreon in the Mike's Podcast. It was a ton of fun to all get together again. Little bit more risque content, which is why it's behind a paywall, but a lot of people have already gotten onto the Patreon, and it's really awesome to see that support. It just helps me pay the bills that this podcast inflicts on me, and just cover that cost so I don't really have to worry about it. So thank you to everyone who has checked it out so far. Here is a little teaser from the Mike's Podcast. And again, little bit of foul language in this from Siggy Mike, but here's something you can look forward to in the Patreon exclusive. Go and sign up now. Please, the more support, the more I can do. Here it is. When I think about it, I actually think I have memories of like when I was a cum. Like I can remember like being like a cum and just like floating around and like being a cum. And I remember that. So Siggy Mike was talking about how he wants to try and get in touch with his long lost father, who he doesn't know. And that's what spurred that conversation about him having memories of being, as he says, a cum. So please go and check that out. It's exclusive to the Patreon. I'd love for you to check it out. Of course, Harry Potter and the Boys is there on another podcast feed and on YouTube. I want to do a call out here. The YouTube is obviously there. Go and subscribe there and check out a bunch of my pop culture videos and news reactions and gaming and TV-based videos. It's growing as well. I'd love a few more subscribers. I really appreciate everyone who's gotten behind me so far. And I am going to be, over the next month or so, moving Harry Potter and the Boys to its own YouTube channel. So more info on that coming soon. Just keep that in mind. Harry Potter and the Boys will move to another YouTube channel exclusively for that content. Aside from that, tomorrow's episode of Harry Potter and the Boys is with my good friend Josh Perring. He is a comedian from here originally from Queensland, but he lives in Melbourne now. He will be on the show. That'll be a lot of fun. Check that out. That's a very bingeable series. I would love if you just binge through the whole series. It's super funny. And I would really appreciate you checking that out. Patreon, radiomike.com.au. Pick up a sticker pack, pick up some merch, a t-shirt, whatever it might be. There's a bunch of merch there that also helps support the show. And if you don't want to do Patreon, but you're willing to just give me $1 a month for a year, send $12 to paypal.me/itsradiomike. That would really help. It's 3 coffees a year. If you'd get 3 coffees a year with this guy, then just send $12. It'd mean the world to me, and I'd really appreciate it. So there's all that. Harry Potter and the Boys, 20th Century Boy, the YouTube channel, Patreon, the exclusive podcast, and etc. The YouTube is really growing, so please, again, get on board that. I would really, really appreciate it. But for now... Oh, and I forgot to add to the board the Monopoly thing. I'll add that next week. All good. For now, that is going to wrap up the podcast for another week. Thank you so much for listening. I will wrap the podcast, as I always do, by saying, my name has been Radio Mike. This podcast has been The Inside of My Mind. Do not block the MDF under any circumstances. I am a very kind young man, and some of your older staff could learn a fair bit from me if they gave me a shot. And there's a couple more. Don't lie to me, because I'll see you, and I'll see you in the Dream Factory tonight. make sure you bring your A game in Monopoly. See you later, guys. I will talk to you next week or at any other time you choose to consume any of my content. Bye-bye. This podcast was a Radio Mike original production. Head to radiomike.com.au to check out all our other content, stay up to date at radio.mike on Instagram, and get in touch, radiomikepod@gmail.com.